Good time of day, internet. Welcome to the RPG Limit Break podcast with me, the one and only time I will probably main host this show, Bob the Ninja Goldfish. Wow, it's been a while since I've been on. And with me, we have the awesome Tiny Tim. Say hi, Tim.
Hello there, folks. My name is TinyTim78. Hope everybody is doing well. Looking forward to this today. It's going to be interesting.
And Netara's here too.
It's just me, Netara. Don't worry about it. I'm here to be the dissenting opinion.
If anyone's going to be the dissenting opinion here, it's me, okay?
That's definitely Bob.
That's literally my job description.
I'm sorry.
So, we are here today for a conversation that this isn't going to be your traditional speedrunning conversation.
So it could be.
It could be. There are things that we can talk about speedrunning in this topic. But we wanted to have a bit of a conversation about the world of multiplayer online gaming, MMOs.
What are those?
Right. I hear there's some award-winning game out there by Square.
I don't know the meme. I'm not doing it. Sorry, you're welcome.
Long story short, it has been somewhat of a banner year for MMOs. World of Warcraft's had The War Within come out. Final Fantasy XIV has had Dawn Trail come out. The Last Shape came out for Destiny. There's been like Guild Wars 2 stuff come out. There's been huge news in Star Trek Online. There's been like SWTOR stuff happening. Like every MMO seems to be getting like every major MMO seems to be getting like big updates this year. So that kind of prompted us to go, there's a bunch of us on staff that like playing MMOs. Let's have a conversation about them.
Couldn't be me. I'd never play an MMO.
So we're gonna. Let's start over with Netara. What's your MMO play history and current and all that kind of thing?
So my history is interesting because I would not describe myself as an MMO player, or I wouldn't have previously. I have done a lot of bouncing off many MMOs. It has taken a lot for me to get into any. I know back, it's got to be like 18 years ago now, I used to play World of Warcraft. And while I really enjoyed my time playing Warcraft, and it taught me a lot about the basics of MMOs, I'm a very plot gamer, and I didn't understand the plot. I couldn't follow it. It was not presented in a way that my brain understood. So I took a break, and I tried some others. I briefly tried like WildStar, which was not very long-lived. You know, there's a few I've just dipped into. And then all my friends were like, hey, Netara, you should come join us in Final Fantasy XIV. And I said, no, I can't do that. No, I respect my time. And I don't have time for an MMO. And then I had a period of my life where I'm like, I'm on a medical week off of work and I need something to do. Why don't I try 14? And hi, we're like years later and I definitely don't still play 14 or do anything related to 14. And I'm not a total like, it's not my life. Hi, it did exactly what I thought it would, but I'm happy about it.
Tim, what about you?
Very, very similar in a lot of ways, but I have been playing MMOs for a grand total of 17 years. My first MMO was indeed World of Warcraft, but my story with it is really interesting because I bought World of Warcraft about a year before I started playing it, and I actually had the box unopened on my shelf. Must have been about 3 or 4 months after the game originally came out, and I didn't play it. I didn't open it. I didn't play it because I didn't want to get addicted to it. And that lasted about a year. And I started playing it in April 2017. And I'm still in the same guild that I was in when I started. And I've basically kind of stopped playing now. The latest expansion didn't really do it for me. But I still love the game. I've also played quite a lot of Final Fantasy XIV. I'm just getting to grips with Dawn Trail. I've played quite a bit of Guild Wars. I played a little bit of Guild Wars 2. I played a little bit of Rift back in the day when it started. Tiny little bit of Star
Wars. That game had so much promise.
It did. It was really good at the time when it first started. A tiny little bit of Star Wars, a little bit of Lord of the Rings online, but really not much beyond that. My majority of my hours are in World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I've been playing WoW since the beta. I've been playing the same character since the beta 20 odd years ago. I've spent a lot of time in Star Trek Online. I've spent a lot of time in Star Wars The Old Republic. I've spent time in Rifts. I had a very brief stint in Guild Wars 2. You know when there's just like one thing that's keeping you in a game, and then the company nerfs it into the ground, and you're just like, yeah, I'm not going to bother anymore. That was me in Guild Wars 2. I struggled to find a place in that game, and then there's like a race of a species of character called that are plants in that game. Can't remember what they're called.
Not Sylvani? I'm not sure.
Anyway, they're plants.
Yeah.
And one of the jobs you could be was an engineer, and one of the weapons you could get for the engineer was a flamethrower. So I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a plant with a flamethrower.
Logical.
And then, like, a month in, they nerfed the flamethrower into the ground, even though it wasn't performing very well anyway. And I just went, yeah, I'm not playing this game anymore because the only thing I enjoy in it is bad now. And just left, and I've never gone back.
They killed the dream.
Yeah, I just yeah. I don't know. Rift was another one. Had so much promise at launch, but Lord of the Rings Online unfortunately suffered from server problems and all of that sort of stuff, so it's almost unplayable. And then I am now in my third attempt to get through Final Fantasy XIV.
And it's a saga. It's a real saga.
Yeah.
Bob versus Final Fantasy XIV.
Listen, some people really connect, and some, yeah, I've definitely heard from other folks too who've had the same struggle. And once they got to a certain part, but again, you shouldn't have to struggle to get to the thing you love.
Thing that annoys me most, is every time I'm playing, someone's like, "Oh, it gets better." Like, yeah, but I want it to be better now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I shouldn't have to wait 3 expansions for your game to get good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It started to get good in the first expansion for me, but I enjoyed it enough.
Yes.
Like, I didn't bounce off of it at the beginning the same way you are. And then, I found by first expansion, I was like, oh, and then it just kept going up. But again,
so this is the thing, right?
Yeah.
My first time through, I made it through the end of Heaven's Word and into like the first like third of Storm's Blood.
Yeah.
But and I think that's part of what I'm going but now that I'm having to go back through ARR, A Realm Reborn, and I'm having to go back through, I will eventually have to go back through Heaven's Ward because I'm no longer experiencing it for the first time. I'm noticing the flaws that are there even more than I did the first time through.
Yeah.
Because it's content I've done before.
Absolutely.
The problem is, if I were to just pick up the character in Storm's Blood, I would be completely lost because I did it like 6 years ago and I have no idea what the plot is up to that point.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm having to go back because Final Fantasy is such a visual novel, basically.
It's story heavy.
Yeah.
It's a visual novel, basically. And occasionally a fight breaks out, right? Like, and some of the changes they've made haven't. Anyway, And that's not a bad. I'm not saying that it being a visual novel is bad.
Oh no.
It's just it is so heavy in that stuff that if you haven't got a clue where the story is or where it can go, that you are so lost. And that was what ended up happening to me.
Yeah. I'd like to interject very quickly, get your thoughts on this, Netara. My own experience with Final Fantasy XIV. I, unlike Bob, I actually really enjoyed A Realm Reborn. I really, really enjoyed the story of A Realm Reborn. I enjoyed Heavensward. I didn't enjoy spending all the time running around getting all my flight points.
I actually love that.
But Storm's Blood was good, but not amazing. And then I'd stopped. I don't think I'd ever played. I'm trying to think where I stopped. Anyway, I started again when Endwalker was about to come out.
Okay.
And I completed Shadowbringers like incredibly quickly because I really, really enjoyed it. And then I really, really enjoyed Endwalker.
Yes.
And then once Endwalker finished, I bounced off the post-patch stuff very, very hard.
Interesting.
So hard that I haven't finished it yet. And I'm just about to finish the last little bit of it before I get into Dawn Trail.
Yeah.
But I would like to back up what Bob is saying. I have found as I've progressed through the game that it's got more and more story heavy and more visual novel like, and it's turned into a case of literally like the bit I was doing this morning. There was one fight in like about an hour's worth of sitting there like playing.
So to cotton onto that, we've been streaming our experience. And we are in the post-ARR patches where you are forced to do the 24-man raid.
Crystal Tower stuff.
Crystal Tower.
We did an entire stream, which is a 3-hour stream. And we got to go through one wing of Crystal Tower because the rest of it was just sitting there reading. And this is a complaint I have in almost every MMO I have. There are moments where I'm like, I feel like my character should be saying a thing right now, and just they don't. Like, there is a specific moment in the Crystal Tower story where a character shows up.
I know exactly the bit you mean.
I don't know. There's a couple of characters who show up, so I'm just like, which one?
A certain character who you have encountered in a dungeon.
With a hammer? With a hammer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
And I am screaming at the top of my lungs. Why are we allowing this man to just walk up to us? And I am just like, this person should be killed on sight. Like, there is no forgiveness here.
Yep.
And it's like I had the same thing with World of Warcraft, right? So they did an expansion called Battle for Azeroth. It was the 8th expansion. And the whole premise is the Horde and the Alliance are going to go to war. And the start of the expansion, there are these 2 big war councils. One's for the Horde, one's for the Alliance. And it's all the different it's all the different leaders of the Alliance factions and the Horde factions. And they're having a meeting about how they're going to go to war. And I'm sitting there going, look, do I not get a say in this at all? And my friend was like, why would you get a say? It's like, well, let's see here. I defeated the elemental lord of fire. I defeated an old god. I defeated the son of the mad black dragon. I defeated the daughter of the mad black dragon. I defeated an archlich. I defeated bug creatures from the dark past of time. And that was just in vanilla. Shall I also list Burning Crusade, Wrath of Lich King, Cataclysm, Like, Miss
Yeah.
like,
In both stories, though, you are the soldier. You are the tool. So
no,
tools don't get
you're
an
not.
option.
But you're not. It's like in WoW, you are the champion of Azeroth. Like, you are single-handedly picked by the leaders of Azeroth to lead an excursion into an alternate dimensions timeline as the forefront of your army. In Final Fantasy XIV, you are the warrior of light. You are the chosen. You are Neo. And at no point when Minfilia is like, you should go to Waking Sands, do you get a chance to go, nah, I want to go to Limbs and Lamin to get drunk with Merweb? Like, because of course you want to do that.
Of course you do. You're a smart person.
Because you're clever.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I really appreciated about Star Wars The Old Republic, right? Mm-hmm. Is you could turn down quests. You could tell people no. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to pray return to the Waking Sands, Dravenheart.
So I think Tim had been trying to ask me for my opinion on something. I never quite got what you were
I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent.
No, it's
there.
all good. I just do want to make sure I answer whatever it is Tim's trying to ask.
Yes, I was interested in your sort of experiences with Final Fantasy XIV. You mentioned how obviously you came into it and whatever, and it's lovely to see that you've got support from your free company here in chat. But it was just to ask how did you sort of get into the game and what makes what and also perhaps to answer sort of Bob's points on the sort of disconnect between game and story, because very quickly, in my opinion, it is just the nature of the beast. I mean, I like it. I think it's good, but I think there could be a better balance perhaps between story and interactivity. But anyway, I'm rambling. I'll let you carry on.
No, you're good. I definitely like the progression for me. Definitely story-wise was definitely like this, with Shadowbringers for me being the peak. And I find it personally interesting that you've bounced off the Endwalker patch stuff, because for those who don't know my history, I got into speedrunning and things through Final Fantasy IV speedrunning. And Endwalker as an expansion was themed off of, and the patches directly, not just themed, are directly, telling parts of the story, all based on Final Fantasy IV. So every fight that came out, everything that was happening, I'm like, it's a new 4 thing. And so I was just here and ready, like, which 4 boss am I fighting now? What are they doing with the 4 plot? Like, is Endwalker going to play out like 4 did? Like, what are going to be the similarities and the differences? And it's a thing they play around with in 14 anyways. You do not have to have played a single Final Fantasy to play Final Fantasy 14. I know a lot of people get intimidated and be like, well, I can't play Final Fantasy 14. I've never played a Final Fantasy. Will you get more from it if you've played different Final Fantasy games? Absolutely. There's references all over the place, but none of the references are there to take away if you haven't. They're there to add if you have. So, I can definitely understand how someone could bounce off the Endwalker content, but for me, an absolute Final Fantasy IV nerd was just like, I am here for this. I want to see how they do the music. I want to see how they do the fight. In terms of in interacting with the plot, one of the big things, I agree with you. You're railroaded into the story. You're this big, important person. And in a lot of key points where you should get an opinion, you do not. What kind of happens in the background with a lot of players is that we end up making our own, we have our own Warrior of Light. We are the hero. We tend to make a lot of headcanons and backstories and things for our own characters, why are they doing this? Or it's just I know in the game I did this, but in reality, my Warrior of Light wouldn't have done this. And here's why. And things like this. And so I definitely think it's really interesting that the Old Republic gives you that opportunity to say no. And I'm certainly interested to see how that could affect progression, because again, in 14, a lot of the story, but like there's a lot of gear sometimes and stuff locked behind these quests. So it's like, how do they handle progression if, you know, you're not being forced into it? But yeah, 14 being a visual novel, I play Final Fantasy games because I love the plot and I'm here for that. Like, I know a lot of them have turned into cutscene %, but I'm also pretty here for that because I love my interactive visual novels. Like, do I get to level up my character and fight some enemies too? Absolutely. Are there lots of activities to do outside of the main story quest, or MSQ, as we call it in 14? Absolutely that as well. Do sometimes they make me punch people and I'm like, why did you do that? My character wouldn't do that. Yeah, also that.
Yeah.
Would like to interject very quickly. Sorry, Bob. Just to carry on from that point, you mentioned there about bouncing off the content. And what I'd actually like to clarify there, and this is a good feed into something I know Bob wants to talk about, is it wasn't actually the content itself that stopped me. It was the method in which it's delivered. i.e., there is an item level requirement at certain points in the story. So once you finish the expansion, you then get these sort of post-expansion patches that come out, every 6 months, every whatever after. But for each one, you have to reach an item level cap to actually complete the actual story quest, the raid or the dungeon or whatever. And that is what caused me to stop. It isn't the actual story. I love the story. I love the Final Fantasy IV connections. I love when every time you hear the music, like I was fighting Gold Bears earlier on, and I got the music and everything. I absolutely love it. But it was the item level. And the only reason I've doing it now is because now the new expansions come out, they've reduced all the gear so it's easier to access. And I've been able to now access the gear to allow me to progress. But I do know that's something that Bob wanted to talk about regarding
there's a lot of weird gating in 14.
Yeah, I just want to pop in about that for a sec. I think their intention, rightly or wrongly, is like, we're releasing this extra content. It is coming with gear. We're expecting you to play those things so you can get the gear and progress. But like you're saying, it doesn't always work out that way and can actually add a level of frustration if you don't do it in the way they're looking. So like, I've never personally had an issue with the eye level, but you've pointed out a really, problem.
It's something that WoW ran into during the ill-fated expansion Shadowlands, right?
Yeah.
And it's something they learned from very quickly. Is content should never be mandatory.
Yeah.
And Final Fantasy XIV has this very bad, or as I have found in my experience with it, this very bad habit of making content mandatory. Even if it is just... So I experienced this very recently at the end of the A Realm Reborn story, where we slight spoilers here, everybody. I apologize, but
for a 10-year-old expansion,
A Realm Reborn did come out a decade ago. Towards the end of the Realm Reborn story, you break into a Imperial stronghold. You rescue some people. You get them out. You turn in the quest. And at the time, you have to be level 46 to accept the quest to break them out. You then turn in that quest. And the next quest is, you must be level 49 to accept this quest.
Yeah.
And I know I haven't
grind 3 levels.
Yeah. They used to have A Realm Reborn used to have a lot more like main story quests, which they were like, this is too much, we're gonna cut it down. And in that section, and I don't know if it's still there, which was even more of an insult to injury, was, you've just saved these people, you have to go and start delivering soup to people. You're like, why am I delivering soup? I have people to fight and things. What are we doing?
What you are describing is the entirety of A Realm Reborn.
Oh, no arguments.
Yeah.
There is a section in that game where they're like, we need you to go hunt down this missing elder of one of the beast tribes, the Sylph Elder. and you're adventuring around Gridania, and Ida and Papamo have come with you and are just stood there watching you do all the work, and you wonder why people don't like them. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're really close to finding this guy. Can you take this ring to the other side of the planet, please? And then you take the ring to the other side of the planet, and the next quest is, oh, just go back.
Just go back. It's fine now. Yeah. And again, that's fixed to Realm Reborn, and it's still like, why?
I did the math on stream, and Tim could back me up on this. There is a portion between where you defeat Ifrit and Titan.
Yeah.
That is 68 quests. None of it needs to be in the game.
Yeah. No, again, anyone who has played 14 will agree with you. Like, and again, to give the developers kudos, they know Realm Reborn is a problem. They know there are issues, and they are working on it. But it's just,
and I don't want this. I don't want this to turn into me heavily criticizing.
Agreed.
14.
But again, no. I absolute 14 stan. Like, I'm gonna finish this and go play some more 14. Like, I get you, but
I'll be logging on tomorrow.
With you.
Like,
I fully agree with you, and so do most 14 players. It is one of those blights on our game, unfortunately.
But what I was trying to get to is to bring it around to Tim's point.
Yeah.
Was they control how much XP is given out, so I shouldn't have to grind 3 levels.
Yeah,
they are making roulettes mandatory. They are making hunting logs mandatory.
Yeah.
In the case of Tim, if he's looking to get eye level from the end of the main story of Endwalker into the patch story, they are making they are making this stuff mandatory, which is a problem WoW had when they made Torghast mandatory because it was tied to legendary progression, right? And I stand by the philosophy that other than the main story, I don't think any content in an MMO should be mandatory.
Yeah.
And that I feel very heavily that a lot of MMOs don't get that, and it's not just Final Fantasy 14, but that was the example at hand.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I would like to quickly interject there about Vanilla WoW regarding questing, because Bob will remember. Before Cataclysm, when they redid a lot of the questing for original World of Warcraft, you would literally have one quest, say for example in Darkshore, which is on one continent, and then you would have one on the other continent, and it would take you back and forth between continents with very little real advantage to doing so.
Yeah.
2 seconds.
Yeah, no, it was you're right. I mean, and it's something that and it's one of those things that MMOs have had to work on for, and I mean every MMO has had this problem at some point or another, which is just the flow of questing, right? And I think 14 and WoW are probably the biggest examples because they're probably the ones that most people have played. It just, you feel occasionally like you're not being railroaded so much. Breadcrumbs, that's the word I'm looking for. So they've started layering in these breadcrumb quests to take you from quest hub to quest hub, and that is a much better way of doing things than just this, like, let's throw a dart at the map and see where the next quest is going to take you. right?
Yeah. I definitely understand them pulling you from place to place a little to introduce some things. But yeah, there are plenty of times I'm thinking both games where you're like, that was a bit nonsensical and like non-linear. Like, it doesn't make sense that you've taken me off this path to do this. And I just want to note for like 14, in terms of like mandatory content, yeah, for the main story quest, there's definitely a lot of that, but they are certainly learning. And I think it's this, WoW is the same case. Both of the sets of like producers and teams are learning from a lot of that. And I know 14 works really hard to make like the normal raids, the alliance raids, the really hard content as well, make that all optional. Because of how story ends up developing, they were forced to go back and make the Crystal Tower raid series mandatory because it never used to be. It only became mandatory after Shadowbringers was already out, due to story reasons. And I understand why they had to make it mandatory, but like you say, I don't like that they had to, even if I understand it. But you can also see as stuff comes up, they're working really hard not to do that again. Because they're like, oh, right, we did this thing. That's really important to the plot. But it requires Crystal Tower knowledge, and people can skip that. So, yeah, I understand. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, main story quest should be what's mandatory, and everything else should be optional.
One thing
Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to highlight there actually is dungeons. Bob will know this because Bob was there. When I first started playing Final Fantasy XIV, I got as far as the first dungeon and stopped. Okay. Because I didn't have anybody else to play with. And it was mandatory dungeons for story progression. And I ended up going in with Bob and Jordan, and managed to get through the first few dungeons. However, give them their due, you now have the trust system.
Yes.
For dealing with that. But not for all dungeons, but for I think the majority, or if not all, of the story required ones.
I don't even think it's all, but most. Like, I have a friend in my own personal Discord who's going through MSQ for the first time, is doing Realm Reborn, and he's playing alone. And I think it was only like the final end of like a Realm Reborn main story that he had to do anything with other players. And he's like, well, back to the trusts. And I really love that they added that option because some people have anxiety about doing it with random people. Some folks don't have closer people they can play with. It's a struggle. It's absolutely a struggle. So again, accessibility adding. So if I want to play alone, I can. Love that.
Yes. Love that. Agreed.
Yeah, like I don't know how I feel about dungeons being mandatory in the MSQ, even with
I agree.
When I've been experiencing a Realm Reborn, trusts weren't a thing for and I was forced to queue. Right. I don't like dungeons being mandatory in anything. I don't know why. It just doesn't play right for me. Give me quests that will tell me where the dungeons are. Give me quests that will lead me to optional story quests, dungeon quests. Sure. But making them mandatory is so.
I think part of that's play style. Yeah, you go ahead, but yeah.
My first time through ARR, every every dungeon I had to do for the story, I never got to fight the final boss. Because I would be watching the cutscene before the final boss.
Yeah.
And everyone else that I had queued into the dungeon with had already killed the final boss while I was in the cutscene.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is a big issue with Final Fantasy XIV dungeons, especially if you're new, especially if you're trying out healing. People don't stop and wait, in my experience.
We're getting better at it. Like, I know that was definitely a problem, and it depends. Again, it's that luck. You get the people who are going to run in. I know when I tank, I let them run in, and I'm just like, I'm not going in. Have fun doing this as a tank. We have someone new. I'm waiting till they're done their cutscenes.
I mean,
Like-
even now,
Yeah.
most recently, we had a guy come in and say, "Hey, I'm new to healing. I'm trying to learn." And our tank just pulled every mob door to door for every boss,
Jeez.
and then got annoyed when they died.
It's their own fault.
Yeah, that was yeah, that is their own fault. People gonna people.
No, not according to that. That's my point. My point
I know.
is, it's why I wouldn't force multiplayer content on people in an MMO, because you are one bad experience away from losing a player.
Well, absolutely. And I think, again, that's not a specific MMO. I think that's just a general MMO struggle.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to maybe talk quickly then about my experience then regarding why I had issues with or why I had trepidation, shall we say, about doing group content, because as I've already mentioned, almost before I started playing Final Fantasy 14, 90% of my experience was World of Warcraft. And for anybody that knows, grouping in World of Warcraft is still, even today, not great. It is a lot better in Final Fantasy now, but when I started playing, I had this absolute fear of somebody saying, "Oh, you're too slow, you're holding us back, you're rubbish." And give the community their due, they're pretty good at the moment, because today, the one I went in, first thing I said to them was, "First time in here, I'm new, I apologize." And somebody said, "No bother, you're good." And then at the end, they even gave me the minion. Everybody passed on the minion.
Yeah.
That was, and I got commendations. Because I made it through the dungeon and I let everybody know that I was new. And I really appreciate that about Final Fantasy 14. Now, obviously, you don't always get that because people, again, are people. But,
No,
I mean,
absolutely.
the general experience in Final Fantasy 14 for me is a lot more positive than it is in World of Warcraft.
I agree
Oh, yeah.
with my personal experience as well. Yeah, go ahead.
But the difference being, you have to opt into dungeons in WoW, right?
Yeah.
You are, except for the one time that they didn't do that and they regretted it and took it away
quickly. Yeah.
and took it away instantly. You have to opt into dungeons in WoW, so you can avoid that experience, right?
Yeah.
You cannot opt out of dungeons in ARR. Now that you have the trust system, it might be easier, but I can tell you for a fact, as someone who is playing alongside an experienced Final Fantasy 14 player, like I'm playing alongside the person I stream with, my friend Jordan.
Yeah.
He is in the latest expansion. He's up to date. He's everything.
Yeah.
I had no idea what a trust was.
Yeah. Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
They don't do a lot to tell you what a trust is, how to access it.
Mhm.
So, but we're talking about a lot of the negative stuff on MMOs, and that's not what I want this to be.
Let's go more positive, shall we?
Before we
Yeah.
segue and agree, I'm not going negative. I want to go difference in MMO quick. So to your point about dungeons not being mandatory, you have explained why I bounced off WoW. I didn't know where I was going. I was lost. What was I supposed to be doing? I couldn't progress because I didn't know where to go and what I was supposed to be doing.
Did you read the quests?
Yes.
When were you playing?
18 years ago.
Yeah, you were playing
Yes.
when WoW was an absolute mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it might be better now,
Yeah.
but that was one of the issues I had. Content, and again, a part of this is going to be player dependent, but I want you to tell me where to go. I need that guy. Do I want the extra content? Yes. Do I want to be able to explore and do my own thing? Cool. But when we're doing the story, I want them to tell me where to go, who to fight, what dungeon I want to be in. So I absolutely, completely understand why for you, like for your play style, that's bad. For me, that's
No.
the good
It's
thing
not. It's
about
not
14.
my.
Oh, yeah.
It's not my play style. Not my play style. the Final Fantasy 14 play style is fine for me. The Final Fantasy 14 experience of go place, talk to person, watch cutscene, go to other place, talk to person, cutscene, have a fight occasionally, is fine. It's great. The thing I don't agree with is the dungeon stuff, but that isn't telling me where to go and where not to go. That's in the other quests, and that's fine. And WoW is no different. You just have to read the quests and follow the breadcrumbs, and just much like A Realm Reborn was a complete mess. WoW Vanilla through the end of Burning Crusade was an absolute mess. It got much better in Wrath of the Lich King, and I won't deny that. It's why when people went, we want to play Classic, I went, do you though?
No, you don't.
You just want your youth back.
Yeah. And again, the reason I'm putting this as to a personal thing is because I did play. I went back for Wrath of the Lich King, and I still didn't know where I was going and what I was doing, and nothing was coherent. For me, for how my brain processes the information, it didn't help me. I couldn't do it. So I was like, so I'm just not going to play. And again, I'm glad it's there like that. That's not even me saying it should be different. I like that it's different because, again, different people like different things. And so having different games like that, that's great. That's so good.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should continue this conversation later.
Yeah, sure.
No, but Warcraft has definitely improved. It's got a lot easier to follow. But that's one of the things coming over to Final Fantasy from World of Warcraft that I appreciated is I did appreciate the storyline. I felt that it was very easy to follow in Final Fantasy 14, and it was fairly straightforward. The only real thing that I had issues with, two things I had issues with, are things I've mentioned: mandatory dungeons and the item level stuff, and that which only really crops up at the end of an expansion. So. Overall, I enjoy the flow of sort of how Final Fantasy plays.
Yeah. It's weird because there's a lot to like about Final Fantasy, right? The in-depth story, the long-term storytelling, and all of that sort of stuff. And I want to say that there are some outliers to that in every game, right? Like I'm when you see me stammering like this, it's because I'm trying to think of a way to say things without spoiling stuff. Like the most recent WoW expansion, I've been absolutely in love with the last two expansions.
I've heard the most recent expansion. A few of my WoW friends absolutely are like, it's amazing. It's so good. They really hit everything I was hoping they'd hit.
Whereas Tim bounced off it, right? And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's really, War Within's been, for me, War Within has been incredible. Dragonflight was incredible.
Sorry, just to interject quickly. I'm still halfway through War Within, and it's not so much a bounce off it, I feel. It's that it just hasn't grabbed me. It's good, and I appreciate what it's been doing. And the storyline, I agree with you, Bob. Some of the stuff has been fantastic. I mean, I finished the first zone and really enjoyed the storyline. But the gameplay for me, because I've played World of Warcraft for so long, obviously you've played it longer than I have, but I've played it for so long that I think I've just kind of got bored of it. I've just reached the stage where I'm kind of burnt out with, well, I'm kind of just done really with the style of it, which is why I've been playing a little bit more 14, because again, it's slightly different and it allows me to sort of enjoy
I made a really
story.
Interesting realization a couple of days ago. I could tell you how to get around Azeroth easier than the way I could tell you how to get around my hometown.
Nice. Love it.
I mean,
and I've lived in both places for about 20 years.
But you can fly over one of them.
Yeah. When they announced that War Within was going to be mandatory dragon riding from the beginning, I nearly kicked off.
Yeah. We've had this conversation. We had this conversation, but no. Honestly, I'm very much in the case of that. I want to give War Within a good shake. So I am going to. But also to put this into context for those who maybe know a little bit about World of Warcraft, I've raided in World of Warcraft for about 15 years, and that's the reason that I'm kind of just done with it now, because the raiding. I felt that it was becoming too much of a chore. It was becoming. I was enjoying it, but it didn't feel. It was just a case of I was feeling I was kind of obligated to do it, and that's kind of why I dropped off. The last 2 expansions have been really quite good. I know Bob wasn't mega fond of Shadowlands, but storyline-wise, I quite enjoyed them. But I certainly enjoyed Dragonflight. But my issue with the game itself has become down to the fact that I've just been playing it for so long, and if you even a good thing will burn out after a long time. So I've very much taken the back seat with it now, and I will dabble at it as and when I feel that I want to. And I think I'll enjoy it more.
I take breaks.
Yeah, I think I'll enjoy it more when I do.
Yeah. Like for a while, I think it was like both Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria. I bought the expansion, I played through the story, I popped back when the patches came out, but that's all I did. Right. And then Warlords of Draenor, pretty much the same. But like I've been back on the wagon now since Legion, pretty much. Yeah. So they're doing a lot to alleviate some of the, and this goes back to the mandatory stuff we were talking about earlier. They've introduced story mode raids this expansion, where you can do a quest line and you can do a solo version of the final boss of the expansion, of a raid. So you can still get the story out of the raid, even if you're not a raider.
I think that's brilliant.
Which I think is amazing. For those people that don't want to raid, they've also made it so that like you don't have to grind Mythic Plus as much if you want gear. Like it's such a The War Within is like, and I'm going to use an analogy here, but let me finish it, right? War Within feels like a fixed Final Fantasy 14 to me. And when I say fixed, I mean there's more to do, right? It's a lot more, fixed isn't even the right word. It feels a lot like here we go. It's a non-visual novel Final Fantasy 14, whereas it's a lot more narrative than your usual WoW X pack. But there is also a lot of gameplay to it. Does that make sense? As opposed to going to place, having conversation. It's we will teach you, we will show you the quest through you going to a place and fighting something and clearing it out, and there'll be conversations around you and that kind of thing. So that is definitely something I think that and this is something they were doing in Dragonflight as well. It's something they've been doing since like towards the end. I want to give Blizzard, not Blizzard, the World of Warcraft team specifically their props, because they heard the problems that everyone had at the end of Battle for Azeroth and the beginning of Shadowlands, and they were like, this can't continue, and they changed it, and they've stuck to their guns.
That's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's something I think that you guys have talked a bit about with Final Fantasy 14 as well, where a lot of the growing pains were in learning about what the community needed, what the community wanted, and adapting to that, right?
Yeah.
It's for coming out of an expansion that almost killed WoW in Shadowlands. Dragonflight and the War Within have been so good. I've cried my eyes out several times. I fully expect to do that at some point in Final Fantasy 14 as well, when I'm more familiar with some of the characters and we're getting to more of the stronger story.
Yeah.
But like there are certain themes that no matter what media I'm watching will cause me to tear up. Like big family things and things of pride in others and things like that. And having been in WoW for 20 years, I've watched Anduin grow up. I've watched Jaina grow up. I've watched Wrathion grow up. And to then watch the War Within intro cinematic and see Anduin dealing with this post-traumatic stress, it's like a next door neighbor watching a kid I grew up alongside suffer in that way. Yeah. And it is hitting every beat that I could ever ask for.
That's so good.
I'm wondering if I'm going to feel the same connection to characters in Final Fantasy 14 because I've not experienced it over a long period of time. I'm going through it in a condensed period of time.
I know I played through Realm Reborn to Shadowbringers, which was current when I started playing, in a fairly condensed period of time, and I found I personally still connected. But again, cool. Your mileage may vary.
Yeah, because like as I said, I know that I can't wait to get into Ishgard again. I love Ishgard. I love the Heaven's Ward. I can't wait to get back there. Even just going back to Kurthus in A Realm Reborn made me feel like all warm in my tummy.
Well, and you're like, oh, I understand a bit more of the politics going on here now.
Yeah. I'm not saying that everything about Heaven's Ward is great. That last bit where you go to the Technicolor Dreamcoat Island in the sky kind of put me off.
Azizla? Who doesn't love Azizla?
Me.
Bob.
Right here.
Right here.
We've got this really dark gothic fantasy environment that's all about religion and the Holy See and corruption and war with dragons. And we're going to end it in cyberpunk.
You ain't seen Cyberpunk yet, but
no.
Yeah, it definitely is more cyberpunk.
Oh, I have. I've been to the Limsa Laminza Aetheryte Plaza and seen people with their Beats by Dre.
No, that's not cyber. That's not cyber. Yeah, that's another cyber.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm loving. And another, we've talked a lot about 14. We've talked a lot about WoW. I also have to give huge props to the guys that currently making Star Trek Online. They are hitting it out of the park right now.
I've heard it's really good.
Yeah, I love me some Star Trek. I'm sitting here with a Lego tricorder and a Lego hyper spray. I'm in the middle of building a Lego runabout upstairs in the studio. I love me some Star Trek. And I dare say that Star Trek Online is a better future for the Star Trek world than Picard.
Well, actually, I'm so behind on Picard. I gotta get back to it.
If like, just give me a season of Picard that wasn't about the Borg, please.
But Picard's entire storyline in TNG.
It's his whole gimmick.
It's his whole thing.
Yeah, I don't know. What can I say? They're doing some really interesting stuff with the multiversal stuff. They're dealing with like Terran things and like the Terran Empire from the Mirror Universe.
Okay.
And
is Kira
again,
there?
I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but for anyone who's watched Star Trek The Next Generation, I am going to spoil this because Lord knows it's old enough at this point. Denise Crosby comes back as the daughter of Tasha Yar, who's a Romulan.
Yep.
right? Seller. In the world of Star Trek Online, which is set after the destruction of Romulus and Remus.
Okay.
Right. In Nemesis.
Right.
She becomes Empress of the Romulan Empire.
Couldn't have happened to a better person.
You are dealing with her all the way through Star Trek Online, to the point where she nearly gets the entire galaxy wiped out at some point. And then all of a sudden, in one of the latest stories, Sela shows up in like a Starfleet uniform.
Okay.
And we still don't know why. And I want to know. Tell me now.
Bob's like, send it to me. Get in my DMs.
Slide in my DMs. But we are dealing with like multiversal stuff right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it might be the fact of something. I don't know. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it, and the gameplay in Star Trek Online is good. I was really worried that the ship combat wouldn't feel like ship combat, but like you feel like you're in a Star Trek, like and there's so many different types of ships as well. A lot of the ships that you saw in Picard were originally designed for Star Trek Online.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Which one were they in first? Like, I know they were designed for online first.
Online.
But did they like?
They've been online first. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So they were in online. Then they pulled them for Picard. That's cool. I love that.
I would like to ask Bob, once you've finished your sort of bit on that, to get your thoughts on Star Wars. Because Star Wars is a very interesting one for me, because I remember playing it when it first came out, and I played about 10 hours or so and then gave up and have never gone back to it. And I know it has changed quite significantly in the time since then.
So Star Wars Online, Star Wars The Old Republic might as well be Knights of the Old Republic 3 through 11. So the way it works is there are class quests and world quests, right? So each planet you go to has its own planetary storyline, and each class has its own class storyline, and the two weave together. So whatever character you go to a certain planet on, the planetary storyline will be the same, but the class storyline will be different, right? So the way that it works is you've got the base, the Old Republic, and you've got the first couple of expansions. I cannot recommend playing those enough. Especially now where it's free it's free, as far as I know. I'm still subbed because I want to support the developers. There is a free version, at least, and I'm not sure how far it will take you. Mm-hmm. But the class quests are really good.
Right.
You can play 4 classes. There's the Sith Warrior, the Sith Inquisitor, a Bounty Hunter, and an Imperial Agent on the Empire side. And then it's Jedi Warrior, Jedi Consular, Smuggler, and Trooper on the Republic side. And each of those have their own storyline that spreads across all the different expansions. Until you reach, then you will reach a point where I'm not going to say budgets were cut, but budgets were very definitely cut.
Right.
And what happens is the storyline becomes the same.
Oh, okay.
Rather than being one, you become what's known as the Outlander or something like that. I don't want to give away spoilers, but it is worth a play.
Right.
They have story modes for every important dungeon. They were, in fact, the first MMO I can think of that did it. Every major story dungeon has a story mode. Raids aren't really important to the story. They're just there to give you that sort of content if you want it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to have played Knights of the Old Republic, really, especially for the first for the Old Republic and the first expansion. The second expansion, Shadows of Revan, definitely plays off of the Revan character and the character from Knights of the Old Republic. However, you learn enough about Revan and that through the story of the Old Republic and the first expansion that you'll have enough of a basis to know who he is and why he's important and that kind of thing when you get there.
Right. It does sound like that game, like WoW, has kind of like the Horde Alliance system. So I'm assuming they fight against each other?
Yes, you can. If you want to do that. You can also absolutely avoid every other human being in that game if you want to. You can absolutely play that game as a single player game if you want to.
I'd like to, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'd like to bring that up actually, because for me, accessibility in MMOs, as in being able to do things we talked about, obviously mandatory dungeons and stuff, I think it's a really underrated thing. My philosophy with this is options are never a bad thing.
Yes.
So if you can have options in your game to make it more single player friendly, then it is only a good thing. Now, certainly back when I first started playing MMOs, there was very much this cohort of people that were like, no, it's not, it's an MMO, you've got to interact with people. Yeah. And I'm like, well, who says? I mean, if you're enjoying it, then it doesn't matter. And if the game can help you in that enjoyment, if you're a person that has social anxieties and doesn't want to speak to people, then there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you can enjoy the game. And I do think that that's a philosophy most modern MMOs sort of apply. I mean, obviously there is the odd exception, and there's the odd bit where you are forced, like Final Fantasy 14's dungeons. But again, as we mentioned, the trust system, etc. But it's very interesting, Bob, that you mentioned about Star Wars. You've already got my interest in that now, because again, that's the sort of thing I would like to do, is just sit and play a single player story and just sit through it, and play it.
I will give you a piece of advice.
Okay, go for it.
If you are going to play through Star Wars: The Old Republic, do all of the stories.
Excellent. All the classes, you mean?
All of the classes, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do you need
Imperial
a different character per class? Or
say that again?
Do you need to do a different character per class?
Yes.
Or is it like 14?
Yes.
Okay. Where you can do them all. Yeah.
Yes.
I gotcha.
Yeah. But they made a change recently where you can pick from any fighting style you like on any class, but the class story remains linked to the class.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So if you want a Jedi that uses blasters and throws grenades, you can do that. If you want a bounty hunter that has like a vibro sword and uses like technological versions of force powers, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would recommend doing the Imperial Agent story last, because it kind of touches on all the other stories, because they're all happening sort of at the same time in the, so like you'll like going through, you'll hear like reference to something that happened in the Jedi Warrior story as you go through the Jedi Consular story, and you'll then hear reference to something that happened in like the Bounty Hunter story as you're working your way through the Trooper story. But the one that pulls them most together at the end is the Imperial Agent.
So I have a question for y'all. We've been talking a lot about non-mandatory content and things. what's your favorite? Like, what is your favorite optional content in your game of choice? Or maybe in either, like, any of the games? Like, what's your favorite stuff to do?
That's a good question.
I'll start. I know for me, for 14, I've got two. One of them that I really like, it's an optional area you can go to called Eureka. Not Eureka Orthos, the new Criterion or what have you, Eureka, which is a zone which has its own leveling. It's got multiple zones within it. It's got a big dungeon at the end. Very divisive, but I like it a lot. I think it's super fun. I also really like the end game raiding. Again, the optional hard fighting content. I find I have to study and practice, and it activates my brain in all of its happy spots.
Yeah, I mean, my answer, that this is going to be a bit of a cop-out answer, I think, but I actually don't, certainly in World of Warcraft, I don't participate in any of the subsystems. I've never been interested in transmogging. I've never been interested in pet battles. I've never been interested in archaeology. I've never been interested in a lot of these other things. I primarily played the game when I played it for the main story and for raiding. That's primarily what I played the game for. And I've noticed the same in
optional.
Yes, it is. It is. It was probably raiding, to answer the question, it would probably be raiding that I would prefer. But in Final Fantasy XIV, very much the same. For example, I've barely ever set foot in the Gold Saucer. I'm not a big fan of, the only thing that I've done is flight points. But that's because I like doing that, ether currents. I like doing that because obviously that has a benefit in it.
Do you not think that's mandatory though?
Yeah, I would argue.
Oh, it is mandatory. It is mandatory, I think, but I focus on it. I focus on it.
You don't. I know people. I was doing fun content with people yesterday, and we went to a zone, and they're like, I can't fly in this zone. Someone who does savage raiding, and they're like, I can't fly in this zone. So, like, there are people who just don't bother. So it is possible. So it is technically optional, but I'm on the camp of it's pretty mandatory.
Yeah. So I'm going to go through all of my.
Okay. Yep.
So Star Trek Online is the easiest one. I like just popping in, doing my dailies. Honestly, like existing in the world of Star Trek Online.
Yep.
Final Fantasy XIV. My favorite thing to do is run around the Limsa Lominsa Aetheryte Plaza making fun of people's names.
Anything you do? There's nothing weird in Limsa.
Yeah, there's definitely not a guy hanging out called Vape Juice, or another person we saw hanging out called oh dear, Reverberating Butt Force. Those are just two names. I love the Final Fantasy XIV cryptids are great.
Yeah, for those who don't know, just to add, for 14, there's 3 main cities. One of them is Limsa Lominsa, and it is the point where people just hang out. They have dancing cat girls, they play music. If you want to just see, like Bob said, the cryptids, the random people, the silliness, you just hang out just in the main plaza in Limsa. Anyways, continue.
I'm not really far enough in Final Fantasy XIV to have access to a whole lot of the side stuff. Mm-hmm. As for WoW, what is my favorite side content to do?
I'm waiting for him to say none of it or all of it, and both are valid. But like,
favorite is an interesting term when it comes to WoW, because so much of it has changed over the last couple of expansions. Beforehand, I would have said going back and running old raids on my alts to gather like transmogs and stuff.
Transmogs,
right?
yeah.
But they just made it true end game.
But they just made it so you can pick up all transmogs on any character. So we only have to run one character through a raid now. Like, I don't have to go, I need this piece of cloth on a mage. I'm going to go run this on a mage. No, I'm just going to run it on my paladin and pick up the cloth anyway. Right? Yeah. Like,
Yeah, the glamour system is the same thing in 14. True end game.
I still enjoy raiding to a certain extent. There are things about raiding that frustrate me, but it's nothing to do with the game itself.
It's always the people.
Yeah. And as in every MMO, I like preaching the ethos that dwarves are the best.
Fair.
Because they are.
Lalafels are technically dwarves in 14.
They are not.
That means Lalafels are the best.
But Bob,
No, they are not.
We had this debate, right, Netara? You'll love this. I said to him, well, Lalafels are dwarfs. And Bob categorically said that they're not.
Keep playing. Anyways, we are not
I know exactly what you're talking about, but that does not make Lalafels themselves dwarves. It makes people who identify as dwarves. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. And then Star Wars, just playing the story. I will often just roll a new character and go back and do the story.
That counts.
Same with WoW. Like, I will often just go level a character in WoW.
Do that in 14 too.
The one thing that I'm actually quite keen on doing for WoW, I'd set myself a target of doing it for the next expansion, but obviously that's been and gone. Yeah. Is I wanted to try and finish all the quests, or the vast majority of them, hit the Lore Master achievement, and they've made that a lot easier as well now, because it will basically, you can effectively do it on one character because it ties in with all your characters. But I just love going back. I love going back. Yeah. One of my favorite things about World of Warcraft now, these days, is they have a system where you can go back and level a character in old content and actually have it at the same level. So you can actually go back and replay sort of old areas, and you can level a completely new character in the old content, but at an appropriate level, so you're not just walking through it. And I love that, because I can just go back to any zone that I fancy. I pick my favorite zone and then just go and play through it, you know. And I really, really enjoy that.
You do that in 14
nostalgia
as well.
Nostalgia hit for me. I love it.
Yeah, that's
the
new
difference
game
with the thing with 14 though is you can't do it with a new character.
No, you have to have done it. Yeah. You're still doing it with your character.
Yeah, so I think that might be my biggest of all the gripes I have about 14. I think the biggest gripe I have is how long it will take me to catch up to my friends.
Yeah. That's absolutely a struggle.
And I understand it's a story-heavy game, and that's the whole point of Final Fantasy. And it is like, but if I want to go do these end game raids with my friends, it is going to take me hundreds of hours of gameplay to get there. Whereas in WoW, I can go see Chromie, I can time walk, I can do like 3 zones of an older expansion, and I'm max level.
Nice.
Right. So I don't know. It's different philosophies of the games, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool.
Yeah, exactly. It would be no fun if WoW and 14 were the same thing.
Yes. And that's why I love the fact that they both exist.
Yes.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah, WoW isn't my jam, but I'm glad it's there, and I'm glad it's lots of people's jam, because
and I'm not
that's
saying
amazing.
I want to underline this.
Yeah.
I am not saying I don't enjoy 14. If I didn't enjoy 14, I wouldn't still be playing it. And I wouldn't have tried 2 or 3 times to get through the story.
Oh, yeah. And when you play multiple, it's just so easy to compare them. Whether they're really alike at all or not, your brain is just automatically going, but in this other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are just certain tropes that don't land with me. I don't know whether it's because I'm not connected to the otaku culture as much as some people, but there are certain tropes within Final Fantasy XIV that just don't land with me.
Fair.
Like the whole there's a lot of assumption that you're going to like every character that you run across at the first time.
Tell us what you think about the Scions, Bob.
Yeah. How are the Scions, Bob? I need to hear this.
There are three of them that I can tolerate. One of whom I can't tolerate anymore, but that's not on me.
It's not on. Okay.
It happens in between ARR and Heaven's Ward.
I was going to say, at this point, you can just say the names. It's,
all right. There's a character called Mombreda.
Oh, God. I've had so many conversations about Mombreda.
Love that woman.
So does the entire community.
Yeah. Cryle. Love her.
Love Crow.
And Hoary Boulder. The true hero of the science.
I'm laughing because I know exactly who you're talking about, not because of the name. That is his name.
He's an absolute background character that's just in a room being amazing, and he's called Hoary Boulder, and he is the best
occasionally.
And he is the best member of the Signers of the Seventh Dawn.
He never will be in a poster. He will never be listed as a Scion, but officially he is a Scion.
He is the best. There was also, if you do, when you first go to it's either the first or second time you go to the Waking Sands. Instead of going straight to see Minfilia, you turn off to the Hoary Boulder is the goat. Yes, 100% true warrior of light, Hoary Boulder. You turn off to the left and you go into the big room that's in Waking Sands that has some the casks and people and Orion J's hanging, and Orion J hangs out in this big room. It's got a bunch of other people in it.
Yeah.
And then there's this character called Clive, and then a character who stood next to Clive, who's very clearly his identical twin sister that doesn't have a name.
Bird.
That came to be known on our stream as Clive's hot sister.
Okay.
And then you go down, and then there's this little passageway, this little cutaway. If you go behind it, there's like some kegs. You just find a person raking the floor with a pitchfork. A stone floor with a pitchfork.
So good.
Absolute goat. Every other member of Science of Seventh Dawn can get in the pissing sea. I can't stand them.
To give them credit, they do develop, but they go through amazing stories. I know in Realm Reborn, I was moderate for most of them and outright hated some of them. And I'm at this point, I basically love all of them at this point. But again, the party makeup changes, and they actually get visual novel story-wise, get proper character development.
Good.
I am actually really interested, Bob, in seeing as you progress through the storyline.
Me too.
If your opinions on them change, because I have to say I love the Scions pretty much like Netara.
I will say that there is a lot of presumed knowledge around the Scions in ARR.
Absolutely.
They keep talking about the students of Baldesion and these. And something else, and they keep referencing the cane that's on the wall in Minfilia's office.
1.0,
and none of it is ever explained. And it's a lot of presumed knowledge of the original Final Fantasy XIV.
Yep.
Which is a huge thing that I've been running into in ARR.
They do, I had the same problem. And they do slowly start explaining more of it as you go on, because I think they realize that. They're like, no, not everyone has played the original version of this game that we literally nuked. It was so bad.
Yeah.
Weird. Yeah, exactly. I will note my two favorite Scions. One of them essentially is not in Realm Reborn, or is barely in Realm Reborn.
Okay.
And the other one I despised, and is now one of my favorites, but was my least enjoyed Scion, and is now probably my top.
Like, the fact that I call him Awful Nerd instead of Alphino should tell you everything you need to know about how I feel about Alphino.
I hated it in Realm Reborn. And even playing Realm Reborn now, I'm just like, Alphino, stop.
There's a moment where he calls you his servant.
Oh yeah. Oh, he is so bad in Realm Reborn, but he gets taught many lessons.
So I was playing a bard at the time, he's like, my servant, and I just and out loud over the stream I went, man, you're talking a lot of smack for a dude in archery range.
Yeah, right.
Like,
I have felt God, small child. Don't mess with me.
And then, I'm looking forward to Alice coming back because I remember her from getting to know her at the end of Heaven's Ward.
My absolute favorite character.
I'm considering starting to call Alpha Node not Alice. Instead of
most of the community.
But yeah, it's really interesting because there's a lot of presumption about you liking characters in Final Fantasy XIV. They also ask you to put up with a lot of stuff that other games would get derided for.
Okay.
Like login queues. Right? Yeah. Can you imagine if in their 7th expansion, if in Legion, WoW had login queues? Blizzard get hell for that on launch day, right? But I have to sit in a login queue every day I want to log into Final Fantasy XIV.
It's usually like, not for long.
But really it's still there.
Yeah, fair.
Right? Especially when you're not only buying the game, you're paying a subscription. And there is, dare I say, an even bigger focus on microtransactions than there even is in WoW. Like the Mog Shop, is much bigger than it is in WoW.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah.
And I can't believe there are login queues in a game that's just like, we are going to monetize everything.
I wouldn't say everything, but yes,
you want to skip the plot? Give us money. You want to skip the plot? Give us money. You want extra bank space? Give us money.
Yeah, you do.
You have to pay for extra retainers, right?
Yeah. But again, all optional. I want to know, yes, of course, they're business. They're going to try and make more money, and we buy it because we're like, oh, you're going to sell me the lunar whale from Final Fantasy IV as a mount for 45 Canadian dollars? Yeah, I'm going to buy it. I'm weak, but yeah, do you have to buy any of it? No, but you're right. There is a lot.
I'm not saying that buying this stuff is mandatory.
No, absolutely.
I'm saying that the amount that they monetize things. Oh yeah. If someone like Blizzard were to try and do the same thing, they would get crucified.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
You want extra bank space in WoW? Pay in-game gold. Mm-hmm. You want extra bank space in Final Fantasy XIV? That's $14.99 a month.
$2, but yes, still the point stands. The amount is irrelevant.
I don't know the number because I've never paid for it. I was just using an example.
I pay for it,
but yeah, just
yeah. No, but you're right. You're absolutely right.
I need to stretch for a second. My knees are already playing up.
Yeah.
If you handle the conversation for a second.
Yeah, of course.
What? Sorry, talk more about 14 while you're gone? Weird. Couldn't be me.
Well, what I would like to actually mention then, Netara, is Final Fantasy XIV. Like I said, I still haven't reached Dawn Trail yet, and obviously without spoilers.
Yes.
Now, obviously, for those who don't know, Final Fantasy XIV sort of concluded its sort of major story arc with Endwalker.
Yes.
And is now starting a sort of new story arc with Dawn Trail. Mm-hmm. And all I've heard about it is that it is very story heavy, basically. That's all I've really heard about it. As somebody who has obviously played through it and is hopefully enjoying it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Are you as a follow up to Endwalker?
Yeah.
Is it still making you enjoy the game? Is it making you want to see what's going forward? Because I am a little bit reticent. That's one of the reasons I haven't got to it yet, because it's been out a few months and I haven't got to it yet. Because Endwalker and Shadowbringers I consumed instantly. I
They were
chewed
so
them
good.
up. They were so good. I literally had to keep playing. Whereas I don't know with Dawn Trail if I'm going to feel the same way. So I'm a little bit reticent about it. So sell me on it then, if you don't mind.
Okay, so let's be clear. I'm never going to be able to sell it to you as a comparison to Endwalker and Shadowbringers. Those were the peak, the climax, the finale of what has been building for multiple expansions. Yeah. And a lot of people went into Dawn Trail expecting the story and the excitement to keep doing this.
No.
It can't.
It can't. No, I do understand that.
Yeah. And so as long as you go into the story expecting this has to go back to a beginning, we're introducing new characters, like we're starting kind of from the beginning again, I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Was it perfect? No. Was it a better start than A Realm Reborn? Easily. And as a starting building off point, I am incredibly excited about what's coming. They have set up some really neat things, both from the end of Endwalker cutscenes I won't mention, but that you, Tim, have seen. And, mentioning places. Have you visited here? What about there? And so we know there's stuff like that, but things in Dawn Trail itself, it has introduced concepts and bringing up things, and we're like, oh, okay, this is really interesting, and this has a lot of room to grow. And so it was, to summarize, first half of Dawn Trail, fun romp. It's kind of a mostly self-contained story. Second half of Dawn Trail, hugely built escalation off the beginning story, which for me, the second half is where it all is. You're having a fun time, everything's great, but all the story's in the second half. Like the plot, like the overall plot that they're going to build off as such. So
question.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, but
cool. Yeah, thank you.
Not everyone did. But yes, Bob.
Question.
Yes, absolutely.
Going back to the point that I made earlier about feeling like it's going to take hundreds of hours to catch up to my friends.
Yes.
One of the things WoW has done is new players, when they come in, will play the most recent but one expansion.
Yeah.
So if you started a fresh WoW account today, you would be forced to level 3 Dragonflight, right? And that would take you 1 to 60.
Yes. Yeah.
And then within would take you 60 to 70. Right? Do you think that they should have made it so that new Final Fantasy 14 players could start at Dawn Trail?
No. Okay, hold on a sec. At Dawn Trail, that is an interesting question because
you're calling it a reboot, a restart,
not a reboot, but it is a new start, a start to a new story. Let's be clear. It is a clear continuation, but it is from a new point. Like it is new.
Give them the option to go back and do the old stuff.
You definitely wouldn't have the connection to a lot of the characters who you're seeing there, but I think from that point, it is certainly a possibility. Again, there's so many things you're going to miss off on because they are still going, hey, you remember this character and the shenanigans they got in other expansions? Hey, look, they're going to show up in this thing and it's in this manner and that's going to be funny because you know their past. Could you start from there? Yeah, you probably could. And I would honestly be interested to see the experience of someone who started from Dawn Trail, kind of played all of Dawn Trail and went on, and then with their free time, now that they're caught up, go back and do the other story and kind of see how that went. Like, the only two starting off points would be either Realm Reborn or Dawn Trail. Do I think you should skip expansions at any other to get to any other point if you haven't played it before? Absolutely not. To its detriment for your point, Bob, but to its own benefit for what it does, it starts a story and it's continual over. Like each expansion has its own story, but it's frequently building and stuff. So doesn't mean you have to play so many hours to get caught up. Yeah, and that part absolutely sucks. Could you start at Dawn Trail? I don't know. Like, again, I'm so steeped in
So
the system, I couldn't
enfranchised,
tell
yeah.
you. I think it would be really interesting to hear the experiences of folks who try it, though, because maybe it would work out and they go, no, actually, I understand. And the stuff I don't understand, now that I'm caught up on that point, let's go replay and, get our understanding. But you'd be right. It'd be easier to catch up on those hundreds of hours when you're already, quote unquote, caught up. When you're playing it kind of in your downtime, than to have to do all of that just to get caught up. Because the further it goes on, the more back you have to do.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what's right, because we're playing on stream, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're playing maybe 6 hours a week.
Yeah.
Of story, which it's taken us nearly a year to get through ARR.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, at this rate, we're gonna hit Dawn Trail 3 expansions from now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like,
oh no, I get you.
I don't know. I think there is something to be said for examining the new player experience every now and again.
For sure. And again, they can't do exactly what WoW does, because again, part of where I get lost in WoW is when I've tried to pick it up again. They start you at this point and I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. I'm totally lost. Like, there's less to play, but I don't understand what I am playing. So but again, it's good they do it, and WoW has worked really hard on streamlining that new player process, and it's changed multiple times in order to work at that. And it already is greatly improved from when I did it, I know. Yeah. So
again, I'm not. Yeah. It's just a theory thing, because
and I'd never even thought about it, but it's a really good question. And I'd really like to find out if there's anyone who's done it and like what their experience with doing it that way is. And you're right, there needs to be some sort of new player option, because again, there comes a point, like, how many more expansions before we stop getting new players, because the backlog is simply too much.
Yep, that is a fair point.
There is the joke about I need to play Final Fantasies 1 through 13 first, but at this point you are literally playing 7 Final Fantasies to catch up to where you need to be. Because you're in expansion 7 now?
Yes, we're in 7.0. Like 1.0 isn't accessible anymore, so it's more like 6. But,
right.
But yes,
only 6 whole Final Fantasies.
I know, only. Yeah, exactly. So and that's and again, with every expansion, it's going to be more and more. Yeah. So that is something I hope they are thinking of over on the 14 team, and they're, like with WoW, pretty good about paying attention to the community and within their own personal standard of reason, trying to add things and cater to the community. I say within their own personal thing because there are a lot of add-ons which nobody uses. They exist, but no one who plays 14 uses them. Yoshi P, don't ban us. Which people use to make things a better experience, but they're not allowed. And occasionally things which are being added get added into the game. But for the most part, it's no, this is the experience we give you. Don't use mods. And we're like, nobody uses mods. What are you talking about? But we need
that's a very completely different ethos to World of Warcraft, of course.
Absolutely.
World of Warcraft has been mod driven from pretty much since the beginning, I believe. Absolutely.
To, again, benefit and negative, because I know a lot of positives about it, about like, I couldn't play this game without this mod, but I've also heard some of the downsides of it as well.
So we have someone in chat, Volklin, saying, I've actually heard multiple people say that they won't touch 14 because they compare it to One Piece. It's too big.
Well, and as someone who just last year started One Piece, I absolutely understand what you're saying. Yeah, my girlfriend loves One Piece, and I was like, she loves One Piece, she's my girlfriend, I'm going to start One Piece. And it's actually, I found out, really heckin' good. But it is still, even with how good it is, I'm stuck on an arc right now because I'm like, this arc is a little slow. And I'm like 200 chapters in out of like over 1,000. So like, I absolutely
So it's the Power
agree.
Rangers Turbo of
Yeah, it
One
is.
Piece.
And so sometimes it doesn't matter how good it is. It's just simply too long. And
Yeah.
I get, that's why I avoided One Piece for so long. Love made me read it, but it's still really hecking long and a struggle.
I say
even
that,
though
but
it's
I've
really
just
good.
gone through like 30 seasons of Power Rangers in a couple of years. So
Yeah, see, there you go. And again, sometimes it's easy to do those things, and it depends. And for some folks, they start it and they're like, no, I blitzed through the entire thing in like a couple weeks, and or a couple months, and I'm all caught up now. And you're like, awesome. Some people don't, like you are doing it on stream, or like can't sit down for that long, or have other hobbies and things. So it doesn't
or
always work out like
families,
that.
or
families,
Yeah.
especially.
Life. Yeah.
Real life says you only have so much time you can put into this game. So am I going to spend all of this small time for like years trying to catch up to the story, or am I just going to do something else? And that's again an incredibly valid point, and something I really hope that Square Enix and like Yoshi P and the team are looking into, because it is something that is already a problem, but is only going to get worse.
So I have a question for maybe both of you. I'm not sure if Tim's engaged in this content. And this is a bit of a clarification story, I think.
Okay.
So a game we've seen on many speedrunning marathons is Nier Automata.
Mm-hmm.
I am of the understanding that there is an entire 3-part raid story.
Yes. There is.
Based around Nier Automata in Final Fantasy XIV.
Correct.
Yes.
How does that fit into the plot?
It is hilarious. Okay, so I have to note, I have never played Nier, any of the Niers, but I'm familiar enough with it to know kind of the idea and whatnot. It is, hey, you go to this place and there's this random person there. Let's go help them. And so you go into this dungeon, and it's like one of the areas in Nier Automata, and you're just like running through, and you come out and you're like, oh no, it's not this character, it's this. So it's like they're treating it as, here, there's this dungeon right here we can go to. We're just sneaking it in. It's not related to the plot at all. It's extra story content, and like by the end, it's like, well, that's an experience. I know.
Could you imagine if Blizzard took an entire patch cycle and went, "Here's an Overwatch raid"?
Yeah. Oh dear.
People would lose their minds.
They lost their minds for it, but in a positive way for 14. They were just like, we love this. We have a Monster Hunter trial, a Monster Hunter fight, both the regular and hard versions. The raid that's coming out, the 14-person 3 thing raid that's coming out for this expansion is going to be Final Fantasy 11 based. So
that I can see, because it's
it's a lot more related. Honestly, for 14. As long as
Hotbot says the rule of cool went a long way for that raid.
It did. It absolutely did. So it's kind of is the dungeon fun? Are the fights in the dungeon fun? Mm-hmm. What is this dungeon giving me? And in Nier's case, which has made it incredibly acceptable, the glamour pieces, which is the transmog of WoW, are incredible. Like there are certain pieces you get out of there that you just look look around any plaza and you're like, oh yeah, that Nier piece and that Nier piece, and because they're just so good and so glamour and fashion is such an end game thing. Like it's such a thing people do in 14.
Because Nier takes place on an alternate version of Earth.
Sure.
So is Earth canon to Eorzea now?
No, they don't explain where it is.
Earth.
We're just going somewhere else. Multi-worlds are certainly canon in Eorzea. It's just somewhere else, and we don't think about it because I'm going to go in and do this cool fight with this great music, and they didn't freaking interrupt the enemies again. And so Netara's going to swear at the other parties, but the music's great, and the fights are usually pretty fun, and that glamour was cool, and oh god, I got the third one again. I hate this dungeon. And that's the Nier experience. And then you get the plot at the end because the story is very near, and you get to the plot at the end and go, what did I just experience? Because again, as me, never having played near, I'm not so used to Yoko Taro's stories, so I was just like, what? It was very neat.
I'm just waiting for Sarah Kerrigan to show up in Stormwind.
Oh dear.
We don't know, it's not going to happen.
Oh Jesus.
Hey, don't worry, everyone, because the Fall Guys collaboration is coming back.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh yeah, there's a Fall Guys collaboration. So there's a part in the Gold Saucer where Tim doesn't go. So again, just extra stuff where you can go and do Fall Guys levels, but programmed in the Final Fantasy XIV system. They are both fun and terrifying, and I hated them at first, and then I got used to them. Like, this is kind of fun. You don't have to ever engage. It's optional content. But you get cool, like, Fall Guys shirts and minions if you do it. Anyway, it's just funny.
I'm looking forward to doing the Halloween event on Monday.
Yes. The gear, the glam, it's so good. I'm already wearing it.
That's one thing I was surprised with Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah,
was the holiday events.
Yes, I'm quite impressed with them compared to World of Warcraft.
I love them. They're almost always good. Sometimes they're like, here, have some candy. And then the next year they're like, here, have a mount. And then next year they're like, here, have amazing glam. And then next year they're like, we're just going to look at you and smile. Like, it's
I kind of would have
really
liked them
good,
to be a bit longer.
Yeah, they're trying to they're shorter to make them accessible, I think.
Right,
they want to transfer it, but
I'm not saying they shouldn't be accessible. I'm just saying they shouldn't be 2 quests long.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, give me like 3, 4, 5, maybe 5 quests.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It's because I think they're doing it because for like they want them accessible to, I mean, like the baby players, like brand 100%. New. And so they're making it short for them, and then for the later players, they know we're just mostly doing it for the
glam.
The glam or the shiny you're giving me. Hey, you just gave me an entire mount. Cool, I'll fly around on that.
Yeah. Speaking of events, WoW's 20th anniversary next patch.
Have they announced anything?
Say that again.
Sorry, Netara. Have they announced anything about that? I've not been keeping up on anything WoW related, so I'm interested to see.
The entire 11.05 patch is the 20th anniversry. It's going to be huge.
Ooh,
they're doing HD remakes of a lot of the tier 2 raid sets.
Nice.
So like the Judgment raid set and all of that. It would take me an hour just to go over all the stuff they're doing. They are rolling out the barrel for the 20th anniversary.
Nice.
I cannot wait. It's everything I think I want in a 20. It touches on all of the old expansions. There's a bunch of characters you haven't seen in a while. They're going to get you to go back and do world bosses and like at level, and it's going to be so good. It's going to be so good.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad they're doing that. That sounds super exciting.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah.
You should probably just look up the stuff, Tim, if you're interested.
I'll go and have a little look and see. As I say, it's been a wee while since I've really looked at much WoW. I've been sort of taking a bit of a hiatus, but I definitely want to look at the 20th anniversary stuff. Certainly.
Yeah. Because for those of you who don't know, we talked. Netara was talking about how Endwalker was like the end of like a 6 expansion story, right? WoW is in what is being called the World Soul Saga, which is a 3 expansion story that is going to kind of wrap up the story that they've been telling since vanilla.
Oh wow.
With like the Titans and the old gods and the Void and all that kind of thing. So the War Within is the first sort of step in that, which is why we're seeing a lot more of the narrative style of storytelling. Yeah, it's real interesting to me to see where things are going.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't want to give away any spoilers, but if you are connected to the World of Warcraft story, War Within is a very, very good expansion.
That's good. Yeah. And again, I have friends who are just like, no 14, just WoW, which again, respect. And they're just like, yeah, can't talk playing this expansion. I'm like, have fun, y'all. Let me know how great it is. Like,
but yeah, I want to get to the later stages of 14.
Yeah.
Because I want to see if it's going to give me the vibes that it gives everyone else. Because a lot of people I know, and a lot of people whose tastes I trust, and Netara, all actually really like this game.
I'm taking that as the compliment. It definitely was.
And no, I have to say I am really looking forward to seeing, because obviously knowing how Bob feels about the sort of early part of Final Fantasy 14, and having watched the streams and some of his reactions on stream is very, very, especially whenever the Scions show up. Is always entertaining.
Oh, there's another one. Then there's another one that's sending me right now.
Oh,
what's his name? Gaharatia, I think his name is.
Yes, Grahatia.
That man's gonna have a chakram enema if he's not careful.
Yeah,
I'm not
going to say anything about that. It's going to be
I'm
good.
sure the community agrees with you, but not for the reasons you. Bless. I see Sylvanas in the. I used to just go and sit in Sylvanas' room.
I invested in the WoW story till my choice to remain loyal to Sylvanas meant nothing. It does mean there are extra dialogue lines you can get in part of Dragonflight that will only access for Sylvanas loyalists.
It's awesome.
That's cool.
I would have stayed loyal for the Horde.
Yeah, but she wasn't acting for the Horde.
No,
I don't care. I would have followed that woman into death, and likely did.
You probably did. Yeah.
I don't even know what the full story of what happens. I've been told general summaries, but yeah, I follow her anywhere. I'm in.
More excited for the Guild Wars 20th? Yeah.
Ooh, Guild Wars.
For those of you in the chat, apologize that we've not been sort of trying to.
I'd love to speak about other.
Yeah, I'd love to see what you guys, some of your hot takes on MMOs and things as well, that we can chat about.
I'll quickly kick off then by talking about Guild Wars a little bit.
Go for it.
As I say, I have played quite a bit of the original Guild Wars. Original Guild Wars is a very interesting game because it is completely different, really, from other MMOs. It was deliberately designed to be different. Guild Wars 2 is a lot more similar to modern MMOs. It's a lot more similar to World of Warcraft, to Final Fantasy. But Guild Wars, the original Guild Wars, was very much a PvP sort of based system to start with.
You couldn't even jump in original Guild Wars.
No, you can't.
It's not even you couldn't, you can't.
You can't. But I have to say, I really enjoyed it, and that I found the storyline really, really interesting. And I like my games for storyline. My problem with Guild Wars is it was kind of the opposite to World of Warcraft for me, because it was so mechanical. Not World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy. It's very, very mechanical. It's you need to be really, really good with your mechanics to get anywhere. And it's also multiplayer. So even today, soloing it is possible because you get NPC helpers and stuff, but it's tough. I couldn't finish it without assistance, without real player assistance. It's really quite tough. But no, Guild Wars 2 has also had its new expansion this year as well.
Nice.
So I think that's its 4th or 5th expansion, I think. And what I like about Guild Wars 2 is it's a complete on-running storyline. So you basically can start at any point and just work your way through the whole sort of storyline, and you can skip. It's not like Final Fantasy where you have to do everything. You can just skip to the bits you want to skip to, really.
Nice.
Which has its pros and cons.
Yeah, of course.
My issue with Guild Wars 2 is that I do find, interestingly enough, I find Guild Wars 2 too restrictive from a systems perspective. I feel it's quite compared to World of Warcraft. There's a lot less you can do with it. There's a lot less number of actions. I mean, it is more customizable, but you can't do it all at once. You basically pick your bits based on your weapon, and then you only have a certain number of skills that you can use, which again is something I find interesting. But I tend to play it more for the storyline rather than the sort of combat. Whereas World of Warcraft has strike quite a good balance for me over the years. It's just I was so used to the formula that I was getting a bit tired of it. Yeah, but no, Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2 are both very interesting games.
Yeah, I wish I connected with Guild Wars 2 more than I did. So I was enjoying while I was playing, but then it just, I don't know, something about it. But when they took away the only way of playing that I enjoyed, it was like,
tree with a flamethrower. Yeah,
I want to be a tree with a flamethrower. God damn it!
Yeah, you take that away, I'm out.
I'm out.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense, though. Yeah.
So I have to ask.
Yeah.
Since we're getting into this, species and class of choice in various games.
Oh yes, that's a good call. That's a good question.
Why don't you start us off, Bob?
In WoW, my main is my dwarf paladin.
Dwarf.
I've been playing him/her since the original beta. Was a progression raider up through the end of Wrath of the Lich King.
Yeah.
I have so many alts in that game. Yeah. My main character in Final Fantasy 14 is currently a. All right. So my paladin is called Bronwyn.
Yep.
A dwarven paladin. In Final Fantasy 14, my original character was a Lalafelian bard that I changed to an Elezen, but the character I'm currently playing, who will end up being my main, is a. I know it says in Dawn Trail that they're called Rugadins, but they will always be Rose to me. A female Rogadin who's currently a dancer. Yeah. Called Lita Alexander.
Love it.
From Babylon 5. In Star Trek Online, I am playing an alien, which you can basically make to look like anything, that I have turned into a dwarf called Corbin.
Okay.
After Corbin Dallas. Which was the original name of my paladin in WoW before I had to name change them when I transferred server. In Guild Wars, it was a flamethrowing tree. And in Star Wars The Old Republic, I have a rat-attacky trooper that I use as my main.
Nice. Tim?
Yeah, I don't have as many as Bob. My main character.
I have one from each game.
Yeah, well, yeah, but still, I don't play as many games as you do. I've got a World of Warcraft. I've got my main character is my paladin, and it's my human paladin that I've had for about 15 years. Not my first character. I still have my first character, which was a human warrior. Other characters I tend to use occasionally. I've got a gnome rogue, which I'm very fond of, and I've got an elf, a night elf druid. But I've pretty much got just about every class in World of Warcraft now. Not at max level, but almost. I don't have as many alts as Bob, put it that way. Guild Wars, I've got. I can't even remember what I've got in Guild Wars. To be perfectly honest, shows you how much attention I pay to the actual character. I play for the story. rather than for the sort of character. What have I got in Final Fantasy? Currently, I've got a monk. I've got a I don't know what you call them, but human equivalent.
A human
monk. Yeah, human. Yeah, monk, which I'm quite happy with.
Nice.
Quite enjoy that, playing that. I do love, we haven't really touched on it, but I do love the multi-class system in Final Fantasy 14.
Yes, I was
really appreciate that.
Lead into the class conversation.
Yeah, we'll talk about that once you've talked about Netara. Yeah, and outside of that, I haven't really got any major things. Though I was a hobbit in Lord of the Rings Online. Obviously.
Oh, nice. I would have been a hobbit if I had played that. Well,
would it shock you to know I played a dwarf?
Yes.
Not really.
Yeah, I'm shocked and appalled. No.
Chat, would it shock you to know I played a dwarf?
So I've only really played 2 MMOs. In World of Warcraft, I started as a night elf because I will always go to the elven characters first. But then I learned the glory of the Horde, and so I had to leave. I had to make a new character because I was like, no, I need to be in the Horde. And I was like, but there's no elf characters. But then Burning Crusade came out and gave us blood elves. So then this was before blood elves. So then there were blood elves. I was like, well, now I can be a Horde character. So I've been a blood elf. I was usually playing some sort of cleric. I think I was a darkness shadow cleric.
Shadow priest.
Shadow priest. I had a lot of fun with that. So yeah, that was what I kind of went to. In 14, I started as an Elezen because I always start as the elf characters. Mm-hmm. And then when I started Savage raiding in Shadowbringers, we were struggling on one of the fights. And we were joking, we should Fantasia, which is what you can use to change your appearance and your race and stuff, into Lalafels until we clear. And so I did it. I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm not changing back until we clear this fight. And it's 2 expansions later, and I'm still a Lalafell.
Still a Lalafell.
I just fell in love with being a Lalafell, so now I'm just a short elf, and it's good
perfection. Little Ferengi boy.
Yeah, exactly. That's me. Good little Ferengi boy. Here, getting people's kneecaps, stealing their money. But yeah, I play. Yeah?
So I told Netara I really wanted to make it a guild in a free company in Final Fantasy 14 that was all Lalafels.
All Lalafels.
And it operates by the Ferengi rules of acquisition.
I'm in. Seriously, when and where I'm in.
The other thing I want to do is I want to make a free company called the 99.
Also in. Well, little less in, but 99. But yeah, I play tanks. I've tried a bunch of the roles, but basically I'm uncoordinated, so I'll step into the soup far too often. So I'm a tank main, Dark Knight specifically, because I can take a hit or two, and people are like, tank privilege, and I'm like, no, not dying in this fight privilege. And I love it. I love being a tank.
So as I mentioned, I wanted to sort of dovetail this into a conversation about the Final Fantasy 14 job system. Which both of you are more qualified to talk about than me. So please go ahead.
Yeah, well, the differences I can say is, WoW, this has kind of been alluded to a bunch in this conversation. But for those not familiar with WoW, you can basically pick one class, one character, one class. And if you want a different class, you have to create a new character, which is fine. Like, if you like that, that's cool. But I really love how 14 does it in that your character can learn any and all of the classes. You have to pick one to start as. And some of them are expansion locked. So I have to reach this part in the story to unlock access to that job. But if you are caught up, you have access to,
right?
Yeah, or level, yes. You have to, which usually you are if you're in the story, but yeah. So you can unlock
I say
all
that
of the jobs.
because I'm in the post patch of ARR and I've unlocked a Shadowbringer's job. I'm a dancer.
Nice. Okay, so yes, some of them are level. Okay, I get what you're saying. Yes, you're right. Then some of them are level locked versus actual expansion.
The only ones that are actually expansion locked are the ones from Heaven's Ward, because you have to be able to get into Ishgard to learn them.
Yup, it's great. So, but that's really good because it means there's plenty of people, not me, I don't have that kind of time, who have just max leveled every single class on their character. And they still make ults because there's any number of shenanigans. But yeah, that's a really fun thing about the job system of 14. It's just like, oh, you're playing a job and want to try a new one? Go ahead. Just do it. You don't need a new character. You just go unlock it.
And I'd also like to add, again, Bob may be a little bit aware of this, but this is something that fascinated me when I started really sort of diving into Final Fantasy as opposed to World of Warcraft, is your professions are classes.
Yeah.
And you level them separately. They have their own quests.
Yes.
They have their own achievements, and they have their own. And I found that fascinating. And I really did. I mean, I was sitting there as a carpenter making stuff and whatever, and really, really enjoy it. And every class, every profession has a level, and you get profession quests that you can only get for a certain level. You get sort of expert profession quests, etc., depending on where you get to. And I do like the way that that's done, and I love it because it's so free form. You can do as much or as little of it as you like.
So my first time through, I got all of the crafting and gathering questions to like level 55.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there are people who are just they play through the plot so they can do more of like the crafting gathering stuff. Like that's the stuff they do. And like there have been times, they haven't done a lot of this, but there have been times where they have actually done crafter gatherer events. There is they announced they were going to have a housing zone in the Heavensward area. This was during Shadowbringers. But rather than just release it, they're like, we're going to have this event where you bring your crafters and gatherers and come into this other zone and gather things here and craft things here and submit it to this area, and we as a community are going to build this new housing area. And there were little once we did it, like there's now games and prizes and extra stuff you could do. And there were also like 50 special slots for like I was one of the top 50 on my server who did the most crafting or gathering for this event. I now have a special title, which Leggy in chat has, I think, one of the crafting titles for that. So that was just a really cool event. I was still fairly new when that was happening, so I participated, but I wasn't really ready to go fully in. But for those who like that stuff, it was really cool.
They did an event like that in Vanilla WoW for the opening of the Scarab Gates.
Okay.
Where like you had to turn in like
cloth,
bandages, and food and supplies for an army. And I really wish they would do that kind of thing again. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do it, Vulcan. Play some 14.
Yeah, come join us. Listen, if anyone comes up to me and asks me, should I play 14? I'm going to say no. Because it's such a time sink. But if anyone starts playing 14, a whole different story, and you're like, hi, hello, what support can I give you? Do you want to play together? Do you need some items? Like, we're all generally pretty happy and excited to have new players. But I can never just be like, yes, you should join us, because it's such a commitment. All MMOs are. But like, I just know how much time I put into 14, and I'm happy I'm in that place right now. But like, I can never encourage someone to do it. But like, if you're going to do it anyways, come play with us. Like,
I had this experience. So for those of you who have played Final Fantasy 14, you will be familiar with the term sprout, because what all new players or new characters have like a little sprout next to their name. Yeah. So it's easily to identify who's new characters. So I was standing in the middle of Limsa Laminza about 2 weeks ago, in fact, and this player just ran up to me and traded me like 99 end game style food, and I was just like, enjoy the game. And I was like, thanks. And she was like, and if you need a free company, just let me know. And I was like, I kind of do. So now I joined their free company, and it's like,
not something you generally see in World of Warcraft. I do remember seeing something like it way back in the day, but not quite the same. It's very interesting, though. We haven't really touched on this, that different MMOs do have different community sort of feels. I mean,
Yes.
yes, people, as we said earlier on, people will be people.
Yeah,
but
of course.
in my experience, there is definite differences between the communities.
Same.
And I definitely feel there's considerable difference between World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy 14. Obviously, they're the two that I've got most familiarity with. But
Yeah.
Bob, would you say the same would be the case with Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever?
Oh yeah, 100%. Star Wars, people expect you to play it solo. Like at this point, people are expecting you to play it solo, and if you don't want to play it solo, bonus, right? Star Trek, the player base is relatively small,
Yeah.
right? So, unless you join a fleet, there's very little interaction. One thing you will deal with in Star Trek is people who are much more advanced than you.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that you will have to be doing a lot is running TFOs.
What does that stand
AKA
for?
Dungeons.
Okay, got it.
You'll need to run them for the events. You'll need to run them. They're like team fleet operations or something. I think that's what TFO stands for. They're not fleet. They're not fleet operations. You can't just run them with. You don't have to run them with members of your fleet. You can queue into them randomly.
Okay.
But you'll have to be doing them a lot for like your dailies, or for the way that Star Trek does its events is they introduce a couple of TFOs, you play them every day, or you do quests every day, and you get progress towards the overall goal, right? And then the overall goal is like a new ship or a transmog or a cool toy or a new weapon. And then each event that you complete then gives you completion towards the yearly goal. And at the end of the yearly goal, you get to choose a ship from any ship in the game. You get to like just and then but yeah, Star Trek, there's not a whole lot, unless you're in a fleet, there's not a whole lot of interaction. You can talk on Starbase or whatever, but like even inside dungeons, you don't really talk. You just do the objectives. But one thing you definitely have to deal with, especially with space dungeons, because there's space dungeons and there's ground dungeons, is people who have optimized their build and will just destroy stuff before you get to it. Because
Which sucks, yeah.
it's a free ride, but
You don't always want the free ride. Sometimes you just want to play the game.
Yeah.
If I wanted a free ride, I'd be doing something else, you know?
Yeah.
I'm here to play.
Yeah.
No, I feel that.
But there are times where you'll be going into a dungeon and it's like, kill these 4 packs, and it's just, you get this one person who's like tuned for like extreme end game content. It's like in any other MMO. It would be like if like a mythic raider in WoW went into like a normal dungeon.
Yeah.
Right? It's, or if like an extreme raider in Final Fantasy 14 did a non-level synced Totorak or something, right?
We wouldn't even go with people. We'd just solo it. But yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, those are the main, and I can't speak to like Guild Wars' community, but I know that like I said, SWOTOR, again, unless you're in a guild or whatever their equivalent is, there is certain content that is called heroic content. It's like Heroic 2 or Heroic 4.
Okay.
Which is supposed to be geared for multiplayer content. Like that's supposed to be 2 or 4 players or whatever. But after a certain point, you can solo it.
Okay.
Right? So even if you don't do it on your initial trip through a planet, you can just go back to that planet and do it later. But yeah, SWOTOR, people expect you to want to play it solo.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
What's the Guild Wars communities like?
Yeah, I was going to chip in. Again, in my very limited experience, it tends to be very, very much sort of solo. Certainly Guild Wars 2 tends to be solo-based. Guild Wars 1's interesting because obviously it's a very old game and there's not normally a lot of people around. But there is the odd one or two, and the odd one or two I've seen tend to be quite helpful. That's what. But it's interesting you mentioned about sort of people sort of carrying through. As I said, I did the dungeon earlier on today with Final Fantasy 14. I did the goal-based fight.
Yeah.
At the end of Endwalker, and as I said, I came in. First thing I said, right, I'm new, and they were really good about it. And they said, okay, no bother, but they stormed off at top speed, and I was really struggling to keep up. That's my problem. I really struggled to keep up. But give them their due. Towards the end, the last boss, there was a big long cutscene before the last boss, and Bob talked about this before. But people you going in the cutscene and then the boss being dead, they waited for me to finish the cutscene. Yeah. And then they stalled. As soon as I crossed the line into the boss, they went for it. And the boss, So they were really good. And to be honest,
I want to clear up my comments on that, because I don't think I made this clear. Yeah. When I was initially playing, people would not wait for me. This time through, when we've been streaming it, people have been really good about waiting. Like when we were doing the Crystal Tower, like I went in and I went, look, my first time in here, let me know if there's anything I need to know mechanics wise. And like when we were getting to the cutscenes, the different parties were communicating, oh, we have 2 of ours in a cutscene, we have 3 of ours in a cutscene. That was really cool. But
they've gotten much better about that.
Yeah, I think that is something that the community has learned, as opposed to learning from the community, if that makes any sense.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, super dope. I'm having a much better experience with dungeons this time round.
Oh, good. It only takes a couple bad people to really make it a terrible time.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I kind of gave up on World of Warcraft in the end. I mean, I know I have a fantastic guild, and I was latterly doing everything with my guild. I would never do any cute content in World of Warcraft without my guild, because it was just horrible. It was just a horrible experience, and I just kind of gave up, really. And Final Fantasy is the fact that you do have to do group content still kind of bothers me a little bit, but 9 times out of 10, I think I've had one negative experience the whole time I've done it. So it's pretty good. Yeah. It's pretty good.
And that was the one that I was in.
Yeah. How did you know? Yeah, I was going to say, I've been playing now for a bunch of years, and like, let's be clear, 14 isn't perfect. I've literally dealt with harassment, but again, this was in Crystal Tower, which if it's going to happen anywhere, it's going to be in Crystal Tower. And they were doing it where everyone could see. So like multiple of us were all like, yeah, that's inappropriate, we're reporting you, and got this person like probably nuked from orbit from the mods because we just super reported this person. But like, I can think of one major event like that. So the community, generally speaking, is pretty great. Yeah, you get jerks, but you put them on your blacklist and move on. So hopefully you'll never see them again.
Like I said, I'm really lucky with WoW. I'm in a very active guild. We hang out every night in Discord, and we're watching movies and stuff like that. So if we need to do a dungeon or a delve or something like that, we just go like, anyone want to do it? And we're like, yeah, sure. And we get a group together from the guild, right?
Which is awesome.
And now that WoW has follower dungeons for Dragonflight and War Within, you can do those on normal difficulty without queuing.
Yeah, it's really good.
They even sort of tied that into the story in War Within. You have to go into one of the dungeons as part of the story, but because they literally give you people to take you through, it's really cool. Yeah, super dope.
Yeah.
And then, but I'm not going to try and defend any game is going to have its bad apples, shall I say?
Yeah, it's toxic elements, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
But that's why there are things like guilds and blacklists and ignored lists and
to help
just
help curate that experience.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to leverage those. Those are there for a reason.
Absolutely. Blacklist people with impunity. Trust me.
Yeah.
It helps.
And after a while, you might run out of space on your blacklist. I've done that. But you can just edit that.
Yeah, chances are there are people who've just stopped playing or they're moved servers, and you can just remove them then.
Yeah. So we're coming up to like...
Yeah.
We've been going for like 2 hours or something at this point, nearly 2.5 hours. I would like to start just sort of wrapping up a little bit, really.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Maybe some final thoughts from the chat, and then we can give some final thoughts of our own.
Perfect.
Lots of people talking about how cool something like a hero system or the followers or trust system is. Marco makes an excellent point about how toxicity is also anything that gets big enough is going to have its toxic elements.
Agreed.
Well, yeah, anything that has people, you risk that happening. So,
Preach.
Yeah.
Preach. Welcome to the human element, especially when there's an anonymity involved. Oh my lord.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the things I've heard to help explain the difference in the community between World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV is the WoW having the alliance and horde, anonymity, like the fighting and everything, animosity, sorry. But 14 is you just all work together. And again, it's not the only reason, absolutely, but I've heard that touted as a potential reason for community.
There's some of that. It's also just that.
Oh yeah.
WoW had at one point tens of millions of players, and
that would also definitely do
it. It's a long-running issue with World of Warcraft, I think. I mean, even when I first started playing, I started playing in 2007, and I wouldn't say the community was particularly nice even then.
No, that's around when I was playing.
So, I mean, it's whereas Final Fantasy XIV, like I say, I've been playing, 2 or 3 years now, maybe 3 or 4 years. And even from the beginning of when I played it, it's been generally a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the other ones I've played have been the same.
So Vulcan says, I did deal with that animosity in WoW during Wrath. My guild leader at the time kept trying to preach how the Horde was pure evil. That's cool. But then you realize in every expansion that you end up fighting together.
Yeah.
Yes.
In literally every expansion. You end up working as a team. You worked as a team against Kel'Thuzad in Vanilla. You worked as a team against Cthulhu in Vanilla. You worked as a team against Illidan in Burning Crusade. You worked together against Arthas in Wrath of the Lich King. You worked together against Deathwing in the Cataclysm. You worked together against Garrosh in Mists of Pandaria. You worked together against every WoW expansion. The Horde and the Alliance work together.
Yeah.
So at the end of Battle for Azeroth, they actually had like a ceasefire, which has lasted in world for like 10, 11 years now. The Horde and Alliance have been at peace. Oh, for those of you that know, at the end of Shadowlands to the beginning of Dragonflight is like a 7-year time skip in WoW. So, like, the Horde and Alliance have been at peace for nearly a decade in storyline at this point. There are still the people that like don't dig on that, but yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, just to bring it back to the three of us for a minute, what do you think it is that enchants you about your specific game of choice?
I mean, you go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
For me, I mean, like I said, I enjoy World of Warcraft for so long, and I still enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. And I do want to continue with next expansion. I want to finish it. I want to see the storyline, especially because I know that Bob's been raving about it and really enjoying it. And Bob and I tend to have the same sort of what's the word, appreciation for the storyline.
Tim's just not as passionate about dwarves as I am.
No, I like gnomes. But no,
wait,
honestly,
hang on a minute. Hang on. Wait, did you say you like gnomes?
I kind of like gnomes. Gnomes are cool. Bob's away. He's gone. I've driven him off, folks. But no, anyway.
Wow. I didn't think it could be done.
He's away. But no, seriously, I love the games I play, and I think it's important. You have to enjoy, especially with MMO. You mentioned earlier on Netara about how long you put into Final Fantasy 14. Well, again, I hate to think of how many hours over my lifetime I've put into World of Warcraft. I mean, I've been playing it for 17 years, as I said. That's a lot of time to put into something. And just because I'm kind of reaching my sort of end with it now, or tailing off with it a little bit, doesn't mean I still don't enjoy it. Final Fantasy 14 I really enjoy. I enjoy the storyline Final Fantasy 14. I really enjoy and this is going to sound bad, but I actually enjoy it because it's not World of Warcraft, because it's something different. Yeah, because it's a change of pace for me. I'm still getting the same sort of enjoyment in terms of like an ongoing storyline and character development, etc. But it's not in the same mechanical shell, if you know what I mean. That's I kind of got tired with World of Warcraft. So that's the main reason really for me, is that. And at the end of the day, something I always say is you enjoy what you enjoy. I mean, Bob, it's great because you have so many different games that you enjoy. You love these different MMOs. You do a bit of Star Wars, a bit of Star Trek, a bit of Final Fantasy, a bit of WoW. I mean, that's fantastic. Whether you do one game or you do lots, as long as you're enjoying it, that's the whole point, isn't it?
I will be honest, if I was not a fan of the IP of Star Trek, the mechanics of Star Trek Online would not grab me to play
That's fair. That does make sense. I know for me, what it really keeps me in 14 is the story. Like, I've always, what's drawn me to RPGs in general, and Final Fantasy more specifically, has been stories. And I keep being like, listen, I understand if folks don't want to get into an MMO, and that's cool, but it is bar none the best storied Final Fantasy I've ever played, 14. So that's what keeps me in, and like, that's what got me starting, and that's definitely what keeps me in and just gets me super invested. And like, I'm just like, it's so good. I'm just so invested in
definitely
this story.
The best Final Fantasy story played.
It is.
Get out of ARR.
I mean more as a whole. Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
agree with you.
Yeah. Definitely not just ARR. Yeah, sorry about that. No, I'm sorry. It's not. But like, it's like ARR was fine, and then I got Heaven's Word. I was like, oh, this is. Oh, there's some character development. There's some cool things happening. And then we went into Stormblood. I was like, okay, there's some more cool things, and there's some new characters. And then we got to Shadowbringers. And my mind was just
goes up.
Peak, for me, absolutely peak. Endwalker again. It just keeps going and building, and I'm just like, how do you keep making this better? Like, I'm just here, feral like gremlin over here, being like, more.
Can I ask you a question about Endwalker?
Yeah, sure.
So as you said, it is the culmination of the story to that point.
Yes.
Does it culminate at the end of the MSQ of the 0.0 patch, or do you have to go all the way through the post-patch stuff for the culmination?
Excellent question. It ends at the end of 0.0. They purposely were no, the story, no patch, because usually, for those not familiar with the patch cycle, it's an expansion end, or a game / expansion ends, and then they can, for the first half of the patch content, they're continuing it and truly finishing it, and then for the second half of the patch content, they're introducing the upcoming expansion. Endwalker is the exception in that the story for Endwalker is over at the end of Endwalker. And then at the beginning, the first patch, Endwalker patch, they start like doing other story and slowly I find the whole quest line there is a very slow introduction to the next expansion, into concepts you're going to need for the next expansion, while the end of that patch is more directly, or the very end of the patch was more directly leading you into Dawn Trail. But yeah, no, it's the story is over as of the end of just 6.0 Endwalker. So you don't have to do any patch for it to be over.
Okay.
They planned on that.
Because I knew that the patch cycle was like the way that they did it was like the warm down and then the warm up sort of thing.
Yeah. The end, the real end, the intro, the new expansion.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, but what about you? What really keeps you going, like, in all of them? But let's say WoW, because that's the one that seems to really have gotten you and is keeping you.
The story, characters, my guild mates. I think not enough is said about the community around these games.
Agreed.
It's a fair point.
I have people I play with both for like my Savage rating, like my free company, like I have friends who I like hang out with and visit now and are just really close to me, who I met through 14.
I don't think enough is said about how much the community that you are playing with the game can affect you if you are playing it with a community. SWTOR, Star Wars. I mean, you can't see it, but up there alongside my swords, I have a lightsaber.
I can't even see the swords.
My real name, I'm named after a Star Wars character.
Nice.
Star Trek is because it's Star Trek, and I love some Star Trek. Hashtag save lower decks. But WoW, it's definitely it's the community, it's the story, it's the characters. And as for 14, because I want to see if it's as good as everyone says it is.
I hope we don't disappoint, truly. And again, I know it's hard to live to the hype. Truly, it's one of those where like it is. I can say it's the best. Yeah, and I hope we can. I truly can. But I definitely understand the concept of I think it's going to be amazing because of the hype, and then you get there and you're like, oh well, this wasn't as good as the hype made it seem.
Very rarely is anything that is hyped up to me lived up to the hype.
I've enjoyed
hype probably makes it worse.
Yeah, I've enjoyed some of the things I've enjoyed the most in my life were things that were either not hyped at all or had a bad hype. And then I went to it and I went into Dawn Trail with literally zero expectations because I was like, there's no way it's going to be better than Endwalker. So I'm going in with little to no expectations. Yeah. And so I had an amazing time. I had a great time.
Yeah. And that's the way to be, right? Like,
agreed.
Oh. So yeah, for those to wrap up, for those of you who don't know, we have made some announcements about the main event. We have revealed that RPG Limit Break 2025 will be happening from May 18th through the 24th. So it's starting the day after my birthday. Again,
happy belated birthday.
At a new venue that is yet to be announced, but we can say that it will be in Denver, Colorado.
We're moving.
Insert Denver Broncos 1984 Denver Broncos jokes here. I'm super looking forward to hopefully being back on site this year for Limit Break in the new city. So fingers crossed that my body will allow me to do that. Before we go, Tim and Netara, I would love for you to tell people where they can find you on the internet. Tim, let's start with you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Yes, I stream fairly regularly every sort of, for a couple of hours, every 2 or 3 days generally when I'm not working. I'm available on twitch.tv/TinyTim78. I tend to focus on a lot of retro game speedrunning, retro stuff. I mean, really old stuff, the stuff that Bob remembers. So I focus on some really old stuff. I'm the same age, so I can say that. But anyway, it's the old stuff that I tend to focus on. The odd bit of RPG content. RPGs are fantastic. I just don't have the time for them generally. I have done MMOs. I've done World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy on stream from time to time. So yeah, if you're interested, please feel free to look me up, Netara.
Yeah, you can find me. I'm currently working getting back into streaming, but you can find me on twitch.tv/Netara. These days, I'm usually streaming 14 content like Savage Raiding and such, but I'm known to stream any number of things, so we'll see what I actually stream. If you're in 14 and want to hang, I'm primarily on Aether, the Aether data center on Cactuar. Just look for Netara. You'll probably find me, but I'm around. So, yeah, come play our games. Come say hi. How about you, Bob? Where are we finding you?
As for me, you can find me on X/Twitter at bobtheninjagoldfish. Please also make sure that you follow RPG Limit Break on Twitter at @X at RPG Limit Break. That is the second best way to get all of the announcements that we're going to make. The best way is to join our Discord. discord.gg/RPGLB. You can find me streaming at 321_TV. Stream Mondays and Fridays from about 3:30 Eastern to about 6:30 Eastern. Due to my streaming partner Jordan having like a job and family and things, so they can't be there at other times, which is why it's taking us forever to get through Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah, blame Jordan. Whatever.
No, I'm just saying that like we were only streaming like 6 hours a week, so it's like
yeah, absolutely.
You can also find me doing a bunch of Power Rangers podcasts and wrestling podcasts and things, but all that will be linked on my Twitter/X. But I think it is time to wrap up for today. And since I am our host, there is only one way that I know how to end a podcast, and that is by saying, in the words of the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and all of those outside that spectrum, please be excellent to each other. Party on, my friends. Tune in for the next one.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Here for now.